Reprise le débat. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge, with respect, that we're gathered on the ancestral lands of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and these territories are unceded and unsurrendered, and they have been places of meeting and exchange for centuries. Je suis conscient que le Parlement lui-même est depuis longtemps un lieu où les relations se négocient, se contestent et se renouvellent. Il est particulièrement opportun de revenir aujourd'hui sur cette histoire, alors que nous examinons une loi qui porte directement sur la manière dont le Canada s'acquitte de ses obligations découlant des traités et honore ses engagements envers les peuples autochtones. I want to rise today to speak in support of Bill C-10, an act to create a commissioner for modern treaty implementation. And Mr. Speaker, the path towards reconciliation has never been simple. That said, treaties, both historic and modern, have shaped and will continue to shape the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples, and as such are vital to reconciliation efforts. Modern treaties in particular are essential to this work. And these constitutional agreements emerged in the 1970s as Canada sought to address unresolved land claims through negotiated agreements rather than prolonged litigation. Mr. Speaker, I want to acknowledge the member for Skinny-Bulkley Valley, who comes from the great region of the Nisga'a, who were among the early signers onto a modern treaty. And many Yukon First Nations were also at the forefront of the push for modern treaties. In 1973, Elijah Smith and a delegation of Yukon chiefs went to Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister of Canada to present the historic document, Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. And this document was among the first land claim proposals to be accepted by the Government of Canada under its new comprehensive land claims policy, and the negotiation of modern treaties in the Yukon began shortly thereafter. Ces accords visent à apporter clarté et sécurité juridique en définissant clairement les droits, les obligations et les modalités de gouvernance. Ils ont été conçus non seulement pour répondre aux greffes du passé, mais aussi pour mettre en place des cadres durables pour l'avenir. Bill C-10 is a priority for modern treaty nations across Canada. At present, there are 27 self-governing nations operating under modern treaties. In the Yukon today, 11 out of 14 First Nations are governed by such agreements. And taken together, these agreements cover a significant portion of Canada's land and sea mass, particularly in the north. They involve thousands of specific obligations and engage more than 30 federal departments and agencies. And this scale and complexity makes effective implementation essential. They also make coordination challenging. The Yukon stands as a strong example of what modern treaties can achieve. Yukon First Nations exercise lawmaking authority, manage lands and resources, and deliver programs and services in accordance with their agreements. At the same time, the Yukon's experience demonstrates a clear lesson. Even well-designed treaties require consistent and coordinated federal follow-through if they're able to fully achieve their intent. Implementation is not automatic. It requires sustained attention, institutional knowledge and accountability over time. C'est dans ce contexte qu'il faut comprendre le projet de loi C-10. Ce texte législatif arrive à point nommé. Il s'appuie sur les efforts antérieurs et va plus loin que les propositions précédentes. Il représente une avancée concrète sur la voie de la réconciliation. Le projet de loi C-10 a fait l'objet d'un examen approfondi par le Comité permanent des affaires autochtones et du Nord, dont je suis membre. Le comité a entendu des témoignages de 27 témoins représentant des Premières Nations autonomes de tout le Canada. Après avoir examiné le projet de loi article par article, la Commission l'a renvoyé à la Chambre, jusqu'à maintenant sans amendement, and that report was unanimous. And this outcome speaks to the strength and consistency of the evidence heard at committee. Witnesses from across the country spoke clearly about the need for an independent body dedicated to modern treaty implementation. They emphasized that existing mechanisms have not been sufficient to address systemic and recurring challenges. Mr. Speaker, I found the testimony of Grand Chief Mathia Alatini of the Council of Yukon First Nations particularly compelling. Yukon First Nations were again among the earliest modern treaty partners in Canada, and their experience offers important insight. The Grand Chief explained that although modern treaties clearly define obligations, the absence of an independent body to track progress has allowed unresolved issues to persist for long periods. Treaty nations are often required to raise the same concerns repeatedly with limited resolution. She emphasized that the proposed commissioner would not reopen agreements or disrupt existing processes. Rather, the office would elevate unresolved implementation issues, provide objective assessment, and help restore momentum where progress has stalled. Une témoin de la nation Naskapi de Québec a souligné l'importance de l'évolution des traités modernes, surtout en considérant l'évolution des politiques du gouvernement fédéral, ainsi que le développement économique et social des communautés impliquées. Selon elle, alors que la mise en œuvre d'un traité signé dans les années 1970 peut maintenant être effectivement accomplie, il demeure essentiel de revoir aujourd'hui cette mise en œuvre et de rappeler un peu l'esprit du traité, ainsi que le contexte dans lequel il a été signé. Elle a souligné le rôle essentiel d'un commissaire de traité moderne dans ce travail afin d'assurer que ces attentes continuent de répondre aux réalités actuelles tout en respectant les engagements et les intentions qui les ont fondés. Opposition members have raised thoughtful questions during the committee study, including whether a new commissioner was necessary and whether the Office of the Auditor General could fulfill this role. Witnesses addressed these questions directly. They explained that while the Auditor General has strong investigatory powers, its work necessarily spans the entire federal government. Reviews of modern treaty implementation have therefore been broad and episodic. Modern treaty implementation, by contrast, requires continuous attention, subject matter expertise, and institutional memory. A dedicated commissioner would complement existing oversight bodies rather than duplicating them by bringing continuous attention and this institutional memory to this work. En fin de compte, le projet de loi a été renvoyé à la Chambre et les témoignages de témoins ont permis d'apaiser certaines inquiétudes et ont souligné la nécessité de cette législation. Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, les partenaires des traités modernes partout au Canada réclament des mesures concrètes. Ils ne demandent pas de nouvelles promesses. Ils demandent la mise en œuvre fidèle des accords déjà conclus. We have listened and now we must act. This bill has been years in the making. Passing it now will ensure that arguments already made are honored in practice and would mark another meaningful step forward on the path of reconciliation. Jonathan, Mr. Speaker, McRich, Koyanami, Ganoshish Masito.
Comments.